Welcome to the Acts of Faith podcast. We're your host. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Shannon. We know how hard it can be to step out in faith and do what God is asking of you. There are so many challenges that we can face and can hold us back from walking in God's plan.
We want to encourage you to take that step of faith. Here, we will share stories big and small in hopes of inspiring you to answer your call. On this week's episode, we are joined by Desiree Burgos. Desiree is a strong woman of faith. She is one of those people that exudes wisdom from God, and you feel a calmness around her. Desiree shares how God asked her to get a second opinion for her son's health care. Our conversation is a little longer, but the miracles and wisdom throughout her story are well worth it. So take a break if you need to, but make sure you listen to Desiree's full, amazing story. You won't be disappointed. All right, it's time. So let's dive in.
Welcome back to the Acts of Faith podcast. Today, we are joined by Desiree Burgos. She is a woman of faith, a wife, and a mom of 7. Oh my goodness. That is an act of God. You are amazing. I'm blessed to be in your presence. Thank you. And she also leads at Beautiful Moms, and she's very heavily involved in our church ministry at Grace Family. And just everything she has ever spoken is just so wise and rich in the spirit. So we felt like, Desiree, you had to come on, and thank you for being here.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I am honored and I'm humbled and I am very nervous. Oh, don't be nervous. That right? You're like, I really don't want to do this today.
Yeah.
He's going to honor it, though. I'm very happy.
I think it's really amazing when people have more children than I do.
Oh, same.
I feel like you have to have this special gift and personality to have 7 children. God has gifted you with the gift of being able to be a mom to 7 kids. I think that's amazing.
Somebody had said once that he has graced you for this.
Yes.
And so I think that's what you're saying. Like there's a grace, that comes upon a mom that has this many, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And you can't see Desiree, but she has a very calming presence.
She does.
She really does.
Thank you.
And I feel like maybe that's part of the grace that's just over you. I do get that. I get a lot that you're very patient. But it shocks me because I was like, inside, I don't really feel patient. So I'm not really sure what you guys are seeing. Yeah, I get that a lot. It's like, oh, you're very patient. Especially we just hired a mother's helper to kind of help me around the house. And she admitted, she's like, you're so patient. And I was like, really? Because obviously she's now around a lot more than anyone, not just at Beautiful Moms or at church. So she really sees the nitty gritty. And I'm like, really? You think so? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. She's like, my parents would stop talking to me a long time ago because we were in the car and like one kid after another was asking this question, that question. I just sat there and just rolled off the answers to the questions. And I don't have to mention that you homeschool all of your children, which that is a full-time job. It is. And very admirable that you felt led to do that and you did that. Thank you. It is challenging. It's worth it. It's worth every minute. Hopefully they'll feel the same too when they graduate.
Well, Desiree, we've asked you here to tell us about a time that God has asked you to step out in faith.
Yes. And I kind of have to give a little backstory so it kind of makes sense. But my oldest son, who will be 12 on Wednesday, he was born and diagnosed with factal association. It's a 7-letter acronym, each representing a part of the body. But I was not a believer prior to having him. My husband was in the military and we were attending a church that we were invited to by another military couple, but I hadn't given my life to Christ yet at that point when I had Daniel. And at 2 days old, he had his first surgery. So what he was diagnosed with was imperforate anus, which means he not only didn't have a thumb hole, his colon actually didn't travel down. It turned and attached to his bladder. 3 holes in his heart, a double kidney with reflux in all kidneys, a shorter spinal cord, and everything after S1 on his spine, including his coccyx, they say is missing. And so they were telling us things like he wasn't going to walk and just like really, really scary things. And I had fed him. I had nursed him before he had found any of this out as well. So they actually had to suction everything out that he had ate or it could have killed him at the time. He was transferred over to a hospital that was 2 hours away from where we lived when my husband was in the military because they didn't have the team or the equipment necessary that he needed. And so he was in the NICU for the first 3 weeks of his life, and then pretty much a week after that for the first year of his life. So he's had 7 surgeries so far. And right now he has a cecostomy tube. So basically he uses flushes, a medical grade enema through the tube that like flushes him out for the day. But you wouldn't know that if like you just like walk by us. He's so full of joy. He not only walks, he runs and does flips and all the things. So he's actually who God used for me to see him. The Lord used Daniel and his diagnosis for me to see the Lord. So that's the backstory of that. And it is a very rare disease, but they don't even call it a disease because the name is association because it's so rare and it's so random. They don't know why it happens. It's not genetics. I say all that to say we had gotten to a point where there was a pediatric surgeon down here that was basically just guessing because they don't know. They have to meet 10,000 other babies to even come close to something like what they see with Daniel. Because also every Vactral child also is very different. It's not like cookie cutter. This is what you do when you have this. Everybody's different. And he was telling us that Daniel had no muscle to be able to go to the bathroom on his own. So he needed a permanent colostomy bag. Daniel, he was like 3 or 4 at the time, and he normally never really spoke throughout the appointments. But I was really thinking, like, I don't think this is right. Like, am I like permanent? That seems really like a strong word. The doctor was going back and forth with like things he wanted to do, things he didn't want to do. And I just didn't really feel comfortable. But Daniel in that moment had turned to me and he looked at me and he said, I don't want a colostomy bag. He had never said anything like that before about any other things that we were doing. And I really felt like that was the Holy Spirit speaking through him, like, get a second opinion.
Oh, yeah.
How old was he? He was like 3 or 4 at the time.
Wow. To be able to say
So,
that.
and he was playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like he wasn't even like fully engaged in the conversation, and he just turned right in that moment as soon as he said it. At that appointment again, he's showing me an MRI that says there's no muscle. There's absolutely no muscle for him to go on his own. So later on, a support group on Facebook found there is a specialist. There's like 3 in the entire world that kind of have devoted their careers to children with Vactral. And one of them is in Columbus, Ohio. And I called and I asked if they were accepting new patients. They said yes. 2 months later, we were heading to Columbus, Ohio to see for a week of testing. I gave them every single piece of paper I had that had every time he had a kidney infection, like all of the surgeries, I had everything. And I sent it up there like, I know you sent all of these, but we'd like to do our own. So the step of faith was actually going up there because one, we didn't know really how we were going to get there. We had other children. That doctor, the surgeon down here, when I was telling him I was thinking about getting a second opinion, he's like, oh, well, I know that we do, whatever we can for our kids, but let's be realistic here. You got to go up all the time type of thing. And it was just very negative in that sense. And so I had that in the back of my mind. But the Lord literally just placed everything in place for us to go. We found a nonprofit that actually pays for flights for children that have to go out of state for medical needs called Miracle Flights.
Wow.
And so they through Southwest, they work with Southwest and they give you flights to go. And most locations have where they have drivers come and get you. So they pick you up. You don't have to worry about getting in an Uber they have it all set up for you. And then we stayed at the Ronald McDonald House, which is always connected to a children's hospital. And so we were there the whole week and we got to do like the science museums there because you get tickets for free. And the one night there was a bingo night and we won tickets to an Ohio State hockey game. And it was very interesting because like the children's ministry pastor of the church that we were attending to before Grace, they were talking to me and my husband, and the one he had said, I just have fun. He's like, I know that sounds weird, but I don't know. I just feel like I'm supposed to tell you guys to have fun. And it was fun in that sense. We got to do all of these things. There was a Lego like emporium there, and we got to do all of those things while we were there. And I'm fully believing at the time that they're going to tell me that Daniel's healed because that's what I had believed it for. I was fasting. I was praying. There was a healing service at the church. I was there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to come home with a piece of paper that said my son was healed. And at the end of the week, we sat in a room with the surgeon. So the way that they work there is they have a team. So it's not just like, oh, you see the colorectal side and they don't really talk to the pathologists. Like they work together. They have a meeting. So they don't mess each other up in that sense, especially with the Vactral trial. Because if you mess with the bladder and you give them something here, that could mess with this.
Yeah. So they're not all separated.
They're not
Like
separate.
specialized doctors typically are. They typically don't correspond with each
They
other.
work
But for him,
together.
they were working together.
Yes. And that's how they kind of built this system in this hospital. And the actual doctor was taking it to other hospitals as well so that they worked together. And so they came together and they told me and my husband, we were sitting there and they said, we think Daniel needs another surgery, two technically, but one together, they're doing together. And I, in the moment was like, really? This is not the healing that I was.
Yeah, it's not what you were hoping for.
Right. This
Yeah.
is not what I fasted for. Like another surgery. Like I don't understand. But I had missed when I was reflecting on it, I had missed the miracle that had come out of his mouth during that conversation. He had said that they'd have to redo the PSART surgery, which is basically the pulling down of the colon and making the hole because it wasn't in the muscle. Right.
Which means he had muscle.
Right. The first surgeon that had done it when he was an infant, they either one didn't put it in the muscle, which doesn't make sense to me. That this is your career and you wouldn't put it in the muscle. This is something you do every day. Or that God placed it there by the time that we got there. And so I believe the latter, that God had put muscle in Daniel for him to be able to go to the bathroom on his own. And so he was like, this usually never happens, but I have an opening next Tuesday if you can extend your time here.
Wow.
And
I'm sure it's impossible to get
so that was, yeah. So
to get these appointments.
Right. And so, because even so, it was like 2 months booked out from when I originally called them. And at that time, it was 2020. So it was the end of February 2020, going into March.
Right before everything.
Right before.
went
So,
there.
yes. So, mind you, we were supposed to leave Saturday. We have this conversation Friday. And he said, if you can extend your trip. So I, called my grandmother and everything. And she's like, stay. Yes. So we stayed. Then it's the day before surgery. So we're supposed to check him in Monday. So that way they can completely clear him out, all of the things. And he starts to cough. He's getting sick. And I'm like, maybe it's just, maybe, because the cold air, like it wasn't anything full blown. He didn't have a fever or anything. And the admissions lady's looking at me, and I think that she knew. She's like, they're not going to do this. They're not going to do this. So we get in. He's in the room. I'm fully believing like it's just a cough. Like that's no big deal. And they're like, oh, we're going to test him just to make sure, And I'm like, okay. They come back. They tell me he has some type of, just regular like a virus type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, like nobody's saying anything other than that. They didn't look like the nurse didn't look concerned or anything. So I'm still thinking, okay, we're going along. Yeah, we're going forward with this. And I'm sitting there and the doctor comes in and he's like, he has so and so and so and so. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, no, I don't think you get it. We're not doing the surgery. He said this type of virus can turn into pneumonia quickly. And I can't have him leaving here worse than he came. And so we're not going to be doing the surgery. Already went through like a roller coaster of like, okay, we need a surgery. I'm now accepting that we need the surgery to now we're not having the surgery.
Mm-hmm. But like a huge setback.
And I'm like, God, what do you want me to do? Just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. I swear I'll do it. Because I'm just so up every doctor's appointment. I'm like, I'm believing for healing. And it's the exact opposite of what I'm getting. I called the pastor's wife at the time and she's encouraging me. She's speaking life into us. And she says, I know that this might be hard to hear, but I feel like God is protecting him. And I'm thinking in my head, from what? From what? What? And she's like, I don't know if it was maybe a nurse that was going to be in there that day or something. She's like, I just feel that in my spirit, like he's protecting him. And I said, okay. And so we fly home and it was good to be home. It really was. And then COVID shut us down less than a week later. And so thinking back on it, had he through with the surgery, and it was at least a week stay after the surgery, because he wouldn't have been he wouldn't have been allowed to eat and all of the things for at least 5 days. So we would have gotten trapped up there away from our kids. Everything shut down, remember? Airplanes, car rental, like all of them. Yeah. We would have been trapped up there away from our kids for at least a month until they really started letting people try and attempt to do these things. And so that's where that protection was.
Yeah. So that little cough, that cough that felt like a huge setback was actually not only a protection for him, but for your entire family so that you could all be together.
Yes.
Right. During the chaos.
And who knows, like, even if he'd had that surgery and everybody was freaking out at the time, especially in hospital settings, how that would have gone. Oh, gosh, no. And so I do now thank the Lord for that. But he ended up having that surgery later in August of that year. And now he still has that cecostomy tube since then. He didn't need a permanent colostomy bag. They said he didn't need that. And so I'm really glad that Daniel had said something, because I might have almost second guessed myself and just would have went through with whatever this doctor said, because I'm thinking in my mind, he's the doctor.
Yeah, he knows.
And so now we visit this hospital yearly. He goes for yearly visits and checkups and testings in Ohio. But that was sort of like the challenges we faced, was like the COVID, the every little thing, all this. But the Lord always made a way, even like when there literally didn't seem to be any way at all. And back then too, like our church family then was like very supportive. Like the whole church was backing us up in prayer. The whole church. We didn't start a GoFundMe or anything like that, or really ask anybody for money, but there were people just like giving us money to just like that I didn't even think about, and those where I was able to get a coffee, because during the hospital stay to just walk the halls, like those little things that might not have seemed like big things to people was really big things to us.
These little things, some people just showing, hey, they care, they're there for you.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you are stuck in the hospital, I understand that just even having a shower or walking down the hall and getting out of that room is just soul changing. You're like, it changes your mental health for a moment.
Yes.
And
so
then important.
Even with staying at the Ronald McDonald House, because as much as we've gone through, and there was a time during that week of testing, and then other times, but during this week of testing, there was a family that's infant had passed away while we were there. And my husband was in the elevator with the dad and Daniel, and they were headed to the Lego room or whatever in the Ronald McDonald House. And the dad was telling Danny, like, oh, you guys know that there's a like a rooftop you can go up, and it's really pretty up there. And he was telling him about it. And Danny only realized that his daughter had passed away because he heard them checking out and saying, our daughter passed away. So, we're going to be checking out. But he wouldn't have known that, because he's sitting there trying to encourage Danny by, go look up at the rooftop. It's really pretty up there. And your daughter just passed away. And we're complaining about what we're going through. But at least he's here. Right. And then there's other, I'm complaining because we're here for a week and a half, and there's families that are there for 247 days, or, and I know, like, McDonald's is like one of the most terrible things to eat. But there's things like the kids meals. I know it's, sometimes it's cheaper to just buy, the 40-piece meal deal and all of the things. But when you buy a kids meal at McDonald's, it goes towards the Ronald McDonald House. When you round up, it goes towards the Ronald McDonald House, because there were times that was, they feed you breakfast, lunch, and dinner in most locations, or at least dinner. They cover that, where you don't have to worry about what are we going to eat today, because they've got the families covered. So like just all of those little things that people don't really realize actually make a huge difference by just buying that or just rounding up.
And ever since Luke's been
to we give to the Ronald McDonald House weekly because we don't give very much, but it's something. Just because when you're in those positions, it just you are just so grateful for that environment and like for somebody else taking care of like a little menial tasks of food and shelter and whatnot, and being close to your job is everything. And it's such a blessing. It's a gift from God, honestly. It is. And it is even just being able to be around other parents that are going through kind of the same thing in that sense, because it's also a perspective shift. Because there was another time they came from another country and were staying, they were there for like 3 months and they were celebrating the child's birthday, and they had decorated like the food area of the Ronald McDonald House. Everybody could come. You guys can come. Everybody can come. And the dad, like, I was bawling during the dad's, speech because he preached Jesus right there in the open in front of all of these families that he didn't even know, but just how grateful he was to be there and how everyone had turned into a family to them and how grateful he was to the doctors and just for being there that long. Compared to when I'm there and we're not there for as long as we could be, it really humbles me in the fact of like, you really don't have much to complain because it could be so much worse.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely, especially when we go, very humbling. I also think that we don't realize how precious the gift of life is. We can kind of blow it off because life can be challenging, right? But I don't think we realize the miracle is just to be healthy, just to be able to take your child home from the hospital.
Yeah.
Or from the birthing center.
Just being able to get up and walk around, to use our arms and our legs, to be able to go for a walk, to be able to cook something, to
Yet to
know.
have that resource even because it truly is a gift and it truly is a miracle. Part of what I wanted to share, in Exodus 13:17 through 19, the Lord spoke to me in the midnight hour. I was reading my Bible and I want to believe it was like 2018, 2019. And those 2 verses, 2 to 3 verses really stuck out to me because it said that God chose to take them the way of the wilderness. Although that was longer, they could have went taken them the shorter way, but they would have faced war and turned back. It really stuck out to me, and it was really like he was speaking to me, Desiree, had I completely and miraculously, spontaneously healed Daniel like you wanted him to, you would have faced war. Whatever spiritual war or spiritual battle I would have come up to, and you would have turned back. You would have turned back to your old way of living. But I am taking you the long way because in the wilderness, although they were not supposed to be there for 40 years, and that had ended up happening because of unbelief and disobedience, that was where they learned how to worship. That was where they learned their identity. That was where they learned how to be still. That was where they learned all of these things was in the wilderness. And so it was like he was saying, I'm teaching you all of these things. Like I found Christ because of the wilderness, because of his diagnosis. So I'm using this so that when we get to the promised land, when I get you to, all that I've promised you, they were giant killers. You're going to be a giant killer. Because at that point, there was giants in that land, like he spoke about. In numbers, they said, oh, we can't do it. We can't do it. But when they finally took over the promised land, they were giant killers at that. They stomped around and an earthquake shook those walls and brought them down to the ground. And so that's what really has held me these last 7 to 8 years after hearing that was, okay, this is not for nothing. There's purpose in the wilderness. There's purpose for it going the long way. And he doesn't just care about getting me there, but who I am when I get there. Because had he healed him spontaneously, I wouldn't be here. I probably would not be here. I definitely wouldn't have as much revelation of his word and who he is without these wilderness seasons. And so that's kind of
You know, when we walk through trials or, hard things going on in our life, and sometimes they do, like it's drawn out. It takes a long time to just get through whatever we're struggling with. Many people have the question, why? Why isn't God, getting rid of this pain? Why isn't God healing me? Why isn't God coming through in this situation? And what a great gift that God gave you to be like, hey, if I had made it easy, you would have went back. And I think we miss that sometimes. So I'm so glad you shared that because we do. All we can see is like the struggle, the pain. We don't realize God's working. He is trying to build us and make us stronger. And that's what he did during that time. He built your faith, and now you're in a different place in your relationship and your walk with him than you were before all that happened. Just curious because you had talked about at the very beginning how Daniel's diagnosis actually, I feel like you said, brought you to God. Do you mind sharing about that just a little bit on how that came?
So I growing up, we did not attend church. My dad and my mom were never together by the time I was born. They had me in high school. And my dad would say that he was an atheist. My mom would say that she believed in God, but we never went to church. I didn't know that you could have a personal relationship with the Lord. Um, Again, this is all the Lord. So I reconnected with my husband, who wasn't my husband at the time, but he was in the military and he had posted some pictures on social media. And I was like, he had some chilies on. It was like, and again, now thinking back on this, it was resurrection weekend, the weekend that we reconnected. And so I kind of like slid in his DMs a little bit to test the waters, and he wrote back and I got it. I ended up getting his number. That was a Sunday. By Wednesday, he had come and picked me up. I was in Pennsylvania, where we're from. He was in North Carolina. He had drove to come and get me. And we had been invited to go to church with another military couple. Mind you, so from the time that I was only supposed to originally like visit him for a couple of weeks, in those couple of weeks, he had asked me to be his girlfriend and asked me to move in. So I went back to Pennsylvania thinking, okay, I'm going to move, the following month I'll move down. And at the time I had really bad anxiety and I had an anxiety attack within like a week of going back to Pennsylvania. And I called him and he's like, just come home. And I threw everything in the back of my car in trash bags, just threw it all and I drove down. And 2 weeks after that, he was like, I think we should get married. And I was like, okay. And 2 weeks after that, we were married. Like from the time that we started talking to the time that we got married was like 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow. And look at him. He was such a persistent man and pursuing you, and he still runs after you and is right by your side because there's no way you have 7 children. You have a very medically complex child as well, and you're still standing together. I mean, what a testament of like a kingdom marriage right there.
And sometimes I forget, because when you go into moms groups and marriage groups, that everybody's going through a lot of things. And sometimes I think I don't realize how good of a man of God he is because it's quote unquote normal to me.
Mm.
And so when I attend moms groups and things like that, and I hear, the way that some women are treated, and I'm just like, I literally text Danny sometimes and I'm like, thank you for being you because it just, I have no idea because it's my quote unquote normal.
Just gives you an appreciation.
Yes. Yes. Not that I'm not ready to appreciate it,
Yeah,
but
it just brings it back.
yeah,
right?
it's like an even more intense, like, wow, I didn't realize that it wasn't like this for everybody. So after Daniel was born, because all throughout my pregnancy, they were telling me everything was fine, he's healthy, and he's born. We're transferred to the NICU. They're suctioning everything out. They're saying he's going to be transported. Now, mind you, we've been going to church with this family our entire pregnancy. So I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I don't get it. And I'm literally saying this like out loud. Like, I don't get it. I don't get what's happening here. I actually, during the NICU stay, every single time he beats a goal, they're like adding another one. And it's driving me insane because I'm like, then he's never coming home. Like, he's never coming home. I kept saying that. And now I wish I wouldn't have spoken that death over him because that's what you have power in the tongue. And I just kept saying that. But I didn't know,
Yeah.
And I was in it after there was one time where he beat a goal and then they're adding another one. And I went to the NICU bathroom. It was like right outside of like the locked doors. They had like by the waiting room of the NICU, there was bathrooms. And I went in and I shut the door and I'm like kicking and punching the air. And I'm like yelling, but not yelling. And I'm yelling at God and I'm saying, they keep saying you're so good. They keep saying you're so good. But this isn't good. I don't understand. This is not good. How can you be so good and this is not good? It was almost like, you remember that? I don't know if you guys seen that movie. I think it's If You Believe or something like that, where his son ends up being in the hospital and he goes to like the hospital prayer room, like the sanctuary, and he's like throwing the chairs and like yelling at God, like, you can't have him. You can't have him. Like that's what it was, but in the NICU bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that was where I was at that point. And so I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get how they're saying that you're good because this is not good. Fast forward, like I'm having panic attacks. I'm having anxiety attacks because, I'm freaking out every time anything happens. I'm having to track milli, not millimeters, milliliters of milk and having to write them down. Anytime he gets a fever, I'm freaking out. We're going back in the hospital. And he has open heart surgery at 5 months old. Again, it was supposed to be like a 7 to 10 day stay after the surgery. Well, he's leaving the ICU and he spikes a fever. He ended up getting a blood infection. And we were there for 3 weeks instead of the 7. And it's just another thing after another thing. And so now I'm not even really I'm not going to church. I'm not really I'm just thinking like, God hates me, like what? I don't understand this. We get to New Year's Eve of 2014 going in. 2015. Yeah. Oh, because mind you, I'm also now pregnant with our second son. I got pregnant 3 months postpartum with Daniel. I got pregnant with our second son. And so I'm pregnant. And at the time, Danny and I didn't get along with Danny's family. And so, again, this is pre-Jesus Desiree. She wasn't very nice. So again, the fact that she even married me, it had to have been the Lord to like show him who I was going to be because I don't understand why he married me. Like thinking back, I'm like, Jesus, Desiree wasn't really cute. I don't know what she saw. Danny and I had an argument because he allowed his parents to come down and visit. And we had an argument after they had left our apartment because they weren't staying with us when they came to visit. And he ended up sleeping in the living room. And it's New Year's Eve. He ended up sleeping in the living room and I'm in our room and I have the New Year's Eve, the
Ball dropping.
and I'm laying on my side. I'm not watching it, but it's on. And I'm laying on my side looking and crying at the wall. I hear then now the countdown is going. And I hear the Lord say, you're not going to act like this anymore. And I gave my life to him. And then the next day, I woke up and I attempted to reconcile with his family. It was like a complete 180. I stopped cursing. I didn't drink anymore. And there was a surgery. So that was January. There was a surgery that Daniel had in February. And I didn't know this till years later. But I guess Danny had texted his mother during that surgery time. And he texted her and he said, Mom, she's just completely different. Even in the way that I was handling the post-op was just completely different. And I didn't realize that, like, because I'm going through it, like, I'm not thinking about that. But he had shared, it was years later that I found out that he had texted her and was like, she's completely different.
Yeah.
And it had shocked him.
Wow. So he could see the Holy Spirit that much in you. It's a totally different person.
Correct. Especially like during those times.
Yeah. I asked that question because, I feel like when you're a newer Christian, a lot of times those hard things that we can go through can kind of turn us away from God if we allow it to. And in your situation, it actually brought you closer to Him. And in that time, you're punching and screaming at Him in the air and stuff and really angry, but He's so gentle and kind because He comes to you like, hey, still here, and He speaks to you. And I said, it's like, you can't act like this anymore. I mean, he's changing you, but he came to you And it fully lets you know he's still there.
And that's the thing too, is like not to say that any way that somebody comes to the Lord is better than anyone else, but it wasn't a church service that I gave my life to Christ. It wasn't, the salvation prayer that somebody led me through in that moment. He literally came for me himself in that room. And so that's mind boggling to me too, in the sense of like, it wasn't, the service, because I attended a lot of them, during the pregnancy. It was, I'm going to meet you right where you're at here.
Yes.
He knew he waited for the time that you'd be ready.
Yeah. That's how Pastor Craig's story was. It wasn't at church. It was in a bar. So God meets you exactly where you're at. Like you're saying, exactly where you're at. Now, I do believe, like you said, he can speak to people in a church service and they can get up and they can go
Yes.
and get prayer. They could be saved in that moment in time. But yeah, a lot of times he does. He meets people exactly where they are, whether it's church, at home, a bar, grocery store, in the car, like wherever you are, he's going to be there chasing after you.
And another thing that I just knew as well is I had tried everything else. And nothing else helped me.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one else helped me.
I can't imagine going through, your situation or other people's situations that I've seen them go through, my own situations without having Jesus in my life.
I have no idea.
Absolutely.
I because I love him so much that I couldn't keep seeing this. Like one time I walked in and half of his head was shaved because they had to put a PICU line in his head because he was going to be there for a while, and they had blown every single vein.
And struggling to see your child not the way that you had hoped or thought that you would see them.
Yes.
Seeing them struggling and going through something so hard that
It honestly hurts, I feel like, the mom even more than the child because you've got that just mom instinct in you. Anytime they came in the room to do anything to Luke when we had our hospital stay, I just was like, I had to walk out. I like could not see another IV go, the PIC line, all of that. It's just traumatizing.
It
for a
is.
mom.
And then even like during there was a time, it was an appointment afterwards because we have to change out the tube every so often. And when it first had the surgery, they were changing it out because they had to teach me and they had to make sure it was in right and all these things. So the first time afterwards that they're putting the tube in, and mind you, they wouldn't let me go in because I believe I was pregnant at the time. They wouldn't let me go in, and they were doing an X-ray to make sure that they were putting it in right and all these things. And the nurse had come out to me and she said, he's not letting us. He's not just sitting still. And he's 5 now, so he's 5 at the time. And they were like, "Are we allowed to hold it so that we can get it?" And I said, yeah. Then so when, like when the X-ray doors in like hospitals and they like click, and then I hear him like screaming, "I promise I'll stay still. I'll stay still. I'm sorry." It kills you inside. It really, really, really hurts. And so, and then there's like nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do.
really hard to just know that something has to be done to help them. But they're hurting. They're struggling. They don't understand. He's 5. He doesn't understand why he fully understand why he has to have this tube inserted and that they have to hold him down to do it. He's feeling, you're hearing his emotions, not understanding what's happening. Is he doing something wrong?
Yeah.
But ultimately it has to be done, but you're hurting because you're seeing him hurt
Yeah.
and you don't know what to do.
And so there's times like that where, I have said, can you let this cup pass from us?
Yeah.
But not our will, your will, because that's literally all you can say. And just trust and believe that this is not for nothing. He's not going to allow this to pass through his hands just so you can be in pain.
There's purpose.
There's purpose, an unexpected purpose, and you might not know it right then and there in that moment. And you could be like, I don't understand. I don't know why. Or to the fact that I don't even care if there's a purpose in this right now.
Right.
But later down the road, you'll look back at all of these moments and be like, that's why. this is why.
And because you have faith, you have eyes to see those whys, which is, and like, if you had no faith, you'd be just lost to all of it continuously.
It can be so like engulfing, like especially when you're in the Ronald McDonald House, there's everybody is you have to intentionally, and during that surgery, his last surgery, I did wear faith-based shirts because there's not a lot of hope going around in there because everybody's upset. I even had to explain this to Daniel because he'd be upset. I'm going home today. And sometimes you could tell the parents didn't really like that. And so I had to explain to him, sometimes we're not going to say that in the elevator because they might not be going home and they might not know when they're going. So he notices things now that sometimes I'm like, oh, wow, you noticed that they had that cross bracelet on there? I didn't notice that. But he will notice those small things.
How amazing that you said in the moment, sometimes you don't see the purpose in it. But going back to when he was in Ohio for the second opinion, and he ended up having to go home because he's sick, and you're now able to see that the purpose for that part was protection. Have there been any other times now that you can see the purpose during Daniel's journey?
Yes, there's been multiple, but just a few. So I used to share it a ton on social media, not for pity. And I would always ask Daniel, is this okay for me to share? So I was pretty honest too on how I was feeling on the posts that I would share. And we actually did like a fundraiser for shirts. They had Daniel Strong on it. And there were people from out of the country that were following me that I had no idea. There was a woman from Pakistan that had bought a shirt. And there have been countless people that have come through a message or, they said something to Danny. Her post really affected me and they really encouraged me to what I was going through. And even so, there have been people that I know have come to the Lord because of David.
Wow.
And it's not just like I can count on one hand, but dozens.
So through this whole thing, part of the purpose for his life is he's bringing others through his story to Christ. Isn't that like what we ultimately want? Them to know Christ, but to share about Christ.
And even during COVID, we had went to the beach one time, and I mean, there was like one other tent, like 100 feet away. And again, he's 5, and we're packing up our stuff to leave, and he's like, "We need to go over there." And I said, I don't know. People are a little iffy right now about coming in contact with people." And he goes, "No, we need to know if they know Jesus."
What was our?
And it was so convicting because I was like, no, like we need to go. You know what I mean? They probably don't want us to go near them.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right, we'll go. But he's ready. Like he was ready. And I was the nervous one. And so that has often happened a lot as well, where he's convicted me in my sense where I'm like overthinking it or I'm nervous to share. And he's like, it's just another day. Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
What's the worst they can say?
I know. Oh, he's got such a brave spirit. I feel like he's been through so much that he's like, what do I have to lose? Let's just, let's do this.
Yes.
He's got that gift of conversation, like you've been talking about.
Yeah.
He can talk to anyone. And that is being able to hold a conversation with people, especially in this day and age, that's a skill. And he has that, and God is using that. He's telling other people about Jesus.
You have to be so proud.
Yeah, I really am. And then, I mean, he read the entire Bible for the first time last year. He took the whole year and he read it chronologically.
That is awesome.
That's
I've done it in a whole year.
Yes, he did. And he was, because there were some days that I missed because I was trying to keep up with him in a sense so that if he had a question, I knew what he had read, And he was on it. And he's doing it again, but he's also now doing it with my second son, D'Angelo. Because now we have a family Bible nights every night. And there was a parable that we read in Matthew a couple of weeks ago. And he was like, oh, well, I know what this parable means. And he started going on and on. And my husband looked over at me and he was like, no, he's pretty spot on. No, he's really pretty spot on with that. So it's just mind boggling, just the knowledge that he has for being so young. And it just reiterates the fact that the Holy Spirit doesn't have an age limit. And I
No.
feel we kind of like think that, oh, we got to wait till they're a certain age and then we can start doing the Bible things or learning the verses. And no, you could start like as soon as they're born.
Yes.
Because by ages 18 months and two, when Daniel was 2 and D'Angelo was 18 months, we had memorized Psalm 91 and they were speaking it. And so like there's no hindrance there that we kind of put there.
Now is really the time when their brains are just sponges and they can remember things, because as an adult, it's so hard for me to really remember verses, to be able to memorize them. But if I have done it when I was a kid, memorizing those verses, I don't know. I just think it's so powerful that they have that inside them. That
And
knowledge is there. For
right.
them
And
to
it says
pull
the Bible says to write it on their hearts. And I tell them we're doing this because there's going to be a time where you're not going to have your Bible in your hand, but you're going to need to know it.
Yes.
Yeah. There was even a time after he had an MRI done, I think, but they had put him to sleep for it. He was that young. And he woke up from that, and I wish I had had my phone out like right there. It was like after the fact, after he said it, and now I'm going back and like, say it again. He had woken up from the MRI, like he shut up, and he was like, "Mom, I just saw the most beautiful thing." He said, "I saw God and Jesus making the earth." And that's a hard concept for people sometimes because Jesus was there.
Yeah. Yeah.
People don't know how to think about that. It was very, like, I could see it in his eyes. The Lord had definitely shown him something there. And it's just pure evidence that the Lord will speak to our children. And that's another thing that I've been pondering lately because I don't want them to just know the Bible facts. I don't want them to just know the verses, but I want them to actually have encounters with the Lord themselves, because it's the love that's going to keep them. Because we know of many people that, have grown up in the church. Well, they knew all the Bible verses. And part of me wonders, did they ever actually encounter him?
Mhm. It's that experience that really holds you to him.
You wanted to have a personal experience. We can point out that all of our blessings and like even just being in this house right now is, the face of God. Seeing this flower over here is the face of God. But for something to personally speak to them and then to say it was God and God talked to me is just what we want for all of them. I love that he woke up like that and you could see it in his eyes.
I mean, I don't think I'll ever forget that face because it was like, no, like this actually happened.
That like strengthened your faith.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, so when you did give your life to Christ, you were finally like, okay, he's told me I'm not acting this way anymore. So now when you have these unsettling times that come, I'm sure you're still going through with Daniel, with your other kids. How do you get through them? What helps you push through those moments? Are there verses that you go to? Is there something personally you ask for God to help you with? Like, what does that look like for you?
Well, normally I try to turn on worship music. Normally the ones that are like based off of a verse that's actually in the Bible. When that happens, faith comes by hearing. So I usually try to speak something, not just think it, because by hearing it, there's an aspect to the sound. But normally it's pretty much that verse that I think back to, that just the time in the wilderness. My prayer has been since that time, since he showed me that, is not my unbelief and disobedience keep us here, because that's what kept them there. They could have been there a lot less time had they believed and had they been obedient. And I also know, and I've come to realize, that a lot of generational curses and a lot of things that have been passed down, they're not easy. They're not going to be easy things to break, or the person ahead of you would have broke it. Another thing that really sticks in my mind is, if I don't break it, they're going to have to. And I don't want them to have to. And so just really sitting with the Lord, and it's just like, I need your help. There was a Bible teacher that came not too long ago to Grace. She was a woman, but she was talking about being honest with God. It is truly just being honest. Like, he's not afraid. He already knows what you're thinking. He already knows what's in your heart. Being honest, like, I don't get this.
Yeah.
Can you help me get it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So just being honest with where I'm at. and not being afraid to be like, oh, my prayer needs to be like, no, but it's really like, I'm having a conversation with you.
Yeah.
And I need to hear you right now. Like, what is happening, especially in the last few years and after a church trip that I experienced, it's gotten more real and raw where it's like, this is no cookie cutter prayer. Like we're going back and forth and I could have some attitude in there. I'm going to be honest with it. But I don't think that he's afraid of that.
No, it's not.
With, it's not that, I'm like, oh, we can disrespect God and dishonor him by the way that we're talking to him when we are in prayer. But there were some times that Jesus was like, do I really have to repeat myself again? How much longer do I have to be here with you?
Yeah. Right. It's cool though that you've been so blunt with him, like, I don't get this, God. Help me get this. And you have like,
And he's just has been faithful to help me get it at some point. It's not, he's like, no, wait.
and your help me get this though, it's just so encouraging to hear like your wilderness depiction. Like, you got it. You get it. Like, you're so wise in that. I've never heard that's a sermon.
It is not normally something, when you hear a sermon and it's supposed to be encouraging, it's normally never those verses. It's normally not in the Old Testament either. And so the fact that even the Lord spoke through the Old Testament is like my favorite to read most of the time.
I really enjoy the Old Testament.
And that's not a normal thing, you know? No, for like most Christians you hear, it's never, oh yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to be in the Old Testament today. You know what I'm saying? But yes, there is. And I feel like because the New Testament has a large depiction about Jesus, I feel like we forget God as Father. Because there was even a time where I was reading the Gospels with a friend, and she's like, wait a minute. Like, I keep saying I want to parent my kids like Jesus, but he doesn't really seem that nice. And some of the things like in the comments that I just repeated, like, how am I saying that I'm parenting like Jesus then? And I'm like, no, you're parenting like the Father. Jesus is our bridegroom. He is closer than a brother. He is a friend. So that relationship is different than God the Father, your relationship with the Father, where you can see that in the Old Testament in Genesis when Sarah lies and says she didn't laugh. He was kind. God was kind, but firm. No, you did laugh. He was kind, but he was firm, like, no, you lied. And so I feel like too, it's brought me closer to the Father in that aspect.
Yeah.
So,
I think a part of this and I wrote this down, because when you are in a struggle or there's something going on and you're talking to God, you're being real with him, being authentic. A lot of times we might pray, God, just help me get through this, or can we just get past this? But instead of you saying that, you're asking him to let not your unbelief and disobedience keep you where you're at. And that is coming from a place of humility and knowing that who God is, that he is sovereign, that he's the Holy One. It's just really, I don't think we come from a place of humility in those times where we're looking at ourselves and thinking, okay, where am I at? Where have I been disobedient in this time? How can I change myself and how I'm living life in order to help us not continue in this?
yeah, because sometimes we can, one, blame it on God as why we're here and why we've been here, or blame it on the devil.
Yeah.
But it's never our fault.
Sometimes it is.
Sometimes it is. So there's a passage in the New Testament, and he says, like, I believe, help my unbelief.
Yes.
And so that is also where that comes from, is like, okay, I believe, but any unbelief that I don't see or I'm not recognizing as unbelief, help me.
So wise. It is really wise. And you're very in tune with yourself and where you are spiritually in those times that you're even able to say, to get to those places. You're such an encouragement. I feel like we're all the same age here, but you feel like you're, seen a whole lifetime of things and you're sharing the wisdom all with us. And the fact that God bottled it up into your short lifetime for you to have such wisdom is truly, I feel like you're godsend, honestly. How is Daniel now?
So Daniel's doing really well. And that's a part of it too that I've been wrestling with, in a sense. Not that, I don't want him to be well. But there, I guess when he first got the tube, I'm like, okay, it'll be a few years. That's it. I'm fully believing full on he won't need it. And there has been times where we've tried weekly bowel management programs where they see like, what can we give him in a sense of like a hospital grade laxative by mouth that can kind of be like, he can choose whether to do the flush or not, or if he wants to do it on his own. And so we've done a few of those and he was younger still. And so they were like, maybe when he gets a little bit older and he knows his body better, that type of thing. And so we've been here for a good solid 6 years now. Going in August, it'll be 6 years that he's had this too. And I've had people on the side where they're like, well, don't believe that he still needs it, like don't accept that he needs it. But then there's also the side of me that's like, he's healthy, he's in a good groove. And so there's part of me that's, do you still believe in complete healing? Are you still even praying for that? Or have you now settled for this? Or is this not settling? This is the healing that that God is saying this is how he's healed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I'm at now with that. But Daniel he's healthy, he's growing, he's smart, he's beautiful, like all of the things. He's now in youth, which doesn't make any sense to me at all.
But how old is Daniel now?
So he'll be 12 on Wednesday.
Okay.
Happy birthday, Daniel.
Yeah.
So you're a miracle. Miracle, man.
That's a miracle. Wow.
When one of the things, especially God opens your eyes when you start to see like blessings so much more apparent that maybe you would have overlooked when you're in like the dark places. Like the fact that Daniel was born at this time, I felt the same way with Luke. Like, thank God he was born at this time. He would not have made it otherwise. All of these medical advances are in place for Daniel to thrive. And I just always praised God for that with Luke. I was like, he definitely would not have made it had he been born in the 40s or whatever. Or even in this country. It was born somewhere else and it happened. Like, just those things came to me so much more clearly. I had no idea how blessed or how those how God had provided that.
Yeah, because sometimes too, like there are believers that are like, kind of against doctors and like, and to think, like, but God is using them at the same time.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, now, without Daniel, those people on the beach wouldn't have heard
About Jesus.
wouldn't have heard about Jesus. Like, he's using Daniel for a very specific, special time.
We can limit God in what he can do many times, thinking that he can't work through a specific doctor or person. God can use any person anywhere at any time.
Right. And sometimes we could, again, put him in a box in the sense of like I did, where it was supposed to be like spontaneous and right then and there. Sometimes he heals in a process. You see that when he covered the blind man's eyes twice and he spit in his hands, he covered, and then he covered them again. So there are times that God heals in a process, that it's not just instantaneous one time. And that I actually he was getting some this was before we started going to Ohio. He was getting some kidney testing done. Was going to another church and they had a gentleman coming. And I just felt like I was supposed to fast that whole day before he come. And I'm like, I'm going to take Daniel in the service and I'm going to see if he can pray for him, because I feel like he's going to be healed. So I fasted that entire day. I took Daniel in. If the service has run late, it's like 9:30, almost 10 o'clock. Daniel is passed out in my arms. The bishop is praying and he's praying over people. He's asking for people to come up for prayer. So I carry Daniel when he's like limp, just passed out in my arms. I walk him through this huge crowd, get up to the stage, and the pastor's like leaving. And I'm like, oh darn, maybe I misheard the Lord. But then somebody turned him around, tapped him, and was like, no, there's one more. And so he turns around, and then there's a recording of it. I hope I can find it to show you guys. But he comes back and he prays over Daniel. And I felt the Holy Spirit so strongly. And I just knew. I was like, he's healed. So the bishop was not supposed to come back the next week. He ends up coming back the very next week. So they make an announcement, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a sign. Like, okay, I thought, this is a sign from the Lord that he's going to be healed. Because right before he was supposed to come, Daniel was having testing done. And normally I couldn't get an appointment with the urologist the same day that testing was done to get the results. Normally they were like weeks apart. But this specific time, I was not only going to have the testings done and the results the same day that he was coming back. And so I messaged him on Instagram and I'm like, I feel like this is a sign. I know that the Lord healed him. I know the Lord did heal him. His kidneys were the left one was like at a 3-4, and the right one was at a 4 on the scale of 0 to 5, 5 being the worst on the kidney reflux. And they came down to both being a 2 or 3. I messaged the pastor, and so I didn't know if he read it or not. So we go to the service. I'm bringing Daniel in because I'm like, this is a testimony. I was blown. This is the first time finally. And he said, where is that sweet mama that messaged me on Instagram? Right. So he calls us out. And I'm like, we were the whole way in the back. I mean, let's roll. Jumping up, waving, like, we're here. And he's like, the Lord told me that when God is done with Daniel, he's not going to have reflux at all. They're going to be at zeros. He's like, we praise him for the healing, but they're not going to be able to find any reflux. And so he had us come back up to the stage and he's like, and I told the mothers group that I was in earlier that day, I said, I believe that he does heal in the process because I remember about the covering of the eyes, right? He brings up that exact scripture and says, I believe I was supposed to come back here to lay my hands on him again a second time. So he lays his hands on him a second time. Daniel doesn't have any more kidney reflux. They're both at zeros, and it's been 4 years.
So you see,
Wow.
healing for Daniel, complete healing.
Of that, yeah.
Yeah, this child.
I have chills.
Testimony in itself from God, like miracles just happening. For
And he
him,
was saying
throughout his whole life.
because there was a VCUG done that day and also an ultrasound, but during that morning ultrasound, when Daniel had turned to his light, he's like, oh, that's my kidney on the screen. He's like, but it's okay because I'm healed. God healed my kidney. What? And so he would constantly do things like that. And it would just blow my mind and encourage me, So he was not only encouraging other people, but his mother.
Yeah. His faith is
And somebody, there was a pastor that once told me too, he said, you need to believe because he's going to be able to look in your eyes and see if you really believe. And so that has always been a thing for me too, is like, you have to believe. You have to believe.
In the Bible, it tells us to have the faith like a child, the faith that Daniel has.
There's no doubt in it. There's absolutely it's mine.
It's impressive and inspiring.
Yes, even like for me, like because it's in his faith does not come from me. Does that make sense? Like
He has a personal relationship.
it's only God. It's only the Holy Spirit.
And that's, man, I pray
For my
my
kids.
kids to
Yeah.
have a relationship like that with Jesus. That's
So do I. That's all you want for them is for their soul to be 100% going to heaven, knowing that is just that's what you want for your whole life.
I want to ask one more question because we do a favorites question. And so, because you have 7 kids, you've had so much going on, what is your favorite way to relax?
She's like, what's that?
I love having tea.
Me too.
I love tea. I love tea. And I don't know if it's just like holding the mug that's comforting, but I will milk a tea all day long. Okay. And my husband's like, you just got a while of spit in there. Can you drink it? And I've heated it up at least 30 times. So, but a cup of tea and just reading. Reading a book. I love to read. And I call a beach, a morning sunrise at the beach, my Jesus place. I call it my Jesus place because like just seeing the ocean and it like you could see like there's like no end to it. It looks like you don't know where it stops and where it begins. And it just brings to mind the vastness of our God and how minuscule, and not in like a really negative way, but like how minuscule I am. Because we can make ourselves so much bigger and our situations so much bigger than they really are. But just looking out and being like, there are creatures and plants and all of the things in this ocean.
Yeah.
But God has literally created them.
Yeah. Created it all. It's beautiful.
So that's I think that's
It's lovely.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you
You
so much
guys
for
are-
being here. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We are so glad you joined us.
We hope you'll tune in next week for another great episode.